Yo, what is going on, guys? Welcome back to another video. So it is finally upon us, the Stanley Cup final, the Edmonton Oilers versus the Florida Panthers. So it's time for me to give my in-depth preview as well as prediction in the series. And I've said it since these two teams looked like that they were clashing once they went up 3-2. This is a close series. I don't want to hear anything about one of these teams. Mostly people talk about the Edmonton Oilers being a far weaker team. This is extremely close. This is going to be a fantastic series. I think it's going to go at least 6 games. It's the closest series probably since 2019, in my opinion, when looking at last year. Vegas, just the better overall team, and Florida was kind of carried by two guys. 2022, Tampa was their third straight Cup final, but they no longer had that depth against that fantastic Colorado team. Both of Tampa's Cups, they were pretty heavy favorites. So when looking at it, it really hasn't been this close since the St. Louis Blues versus Boston Bruins. And I love it. I love the matchups because these teams are kind of built drastically different. They have different strengths and weaknesses. So we're going to go through all of that right now. When looking at how we're going to do that, we're just going to look at first the team stats regarding the offense, the defense, the special teams, as well as the goaltending. Then I'm going to get into some of my key matchups in this series that I think are going to determine these series, as well as two X factors, not necessarily top of the lineup players that I think are going to be essential in terms of stepping up for their respective teams. And at the end, I'm going to give my Stanley Cup pick. So up first, let's look at the two teams' offense, because these two teams are very, very good offensively. When looking at the Florida Panthers, not the Carolina Hurricanes. When looking at the Florida Panthers during the regular season, not the most impressive 5-on-5 offensive numbers, only 2.41 goals per game, but the underlying numbers still were solid, 2.66, which ranked 9th in the entire NHL. 5-on-5 goal scoring in the playoffs, both very good, 2.27 and 2.56 in terms of advanced stats. When looking at Florida's offensive attack, it is very well balanced. They have a great top six, two superstars in Matthew Tkachuk, Alexander Barkov, with a 57 goal scorer. Carter Verhaeghe has scored 42 goals. Sam Bennett's a solid 50-ish point guy. They added Tarasenko, Anton Lundell, Evan Rodriguez, fantastic third liners. It's a much more well-balanced overall forecheck in terms of just constantly coming at you with the pressure. Now, when looking at Edmonton, it definitely is a lot more top-heavy, but I think it is a better in terms of 5-on-5 offensive firepower. In the regular season, they ranked third in goals per game, first in expected goals per game with 3.21. The next closest was 0.4 away for the Colorado Avalanche. In the playoffs, the underlying numbers have not been as good, but they're still producing at a high rate in terms of 2.58 goals per game. And yeah, it's all about the top six with the Edmonton Oilers. The superstar, the best line in hockey, I'm not going to lie, this season has without a doubt been McDavid, RNH, and Hyman. They play so good together in terms of McDavid just being the overall superstar. Ryan Nugent-Hopkins, fantastic two-way player. And Zach Hyman, that net front presence. That line is the best line in the series. It's the best line in the entire league. And then Leon Draisaitl as your second line center is pretty decent. Yes, he's had a rotating door of wingers, but he just makes it work on his own. And that third line, although I don't think their bottom six is as good as the Florida Panthers, with the addition of Adam Henrique and guys like Dylan Holloway stepping up, Corey Perry being a very, very good add midseason, it's probably the most formidable third line for the Edmonton Oilers of the McDavid and Draisaitl era. They finally have some depth. Not saying the bottom six is one of the best bottom sixes in the entire NHL, but it is definitely pretty impressive. So in my opinion, I would give a slight edge to the Edmonton Oilers in terms of their 5-on-5 even strength offense, just because I think it is going to be hard to contain. You can maybe slow down, but I don't think you can fully contain the Edmonton Oilers offense. They are just fantastic. Now, when looking at it defensively, this does lean the Florida Panthers by a decent amount. Looking at them in terms of regular season goals against, 1.89, only behind the Winnipeg Jets for second in the entire NHL. In terms of expected goals, also very good, fifth. And in the playoffs, they have yet again been pretty solid at 5-on-5 defense. And it's the three-headed monster, or more so maybe a two-headed monster. Aaron Ekblad hasn't been that good, but Ekblad, Montour, and Gustav Forsling really coming on this season in terms of turning into a legit top 60, top 50 defenseman in the entire NHL, as well as guys like Nico Mikkola. Kulikov has been a great add. Oliver Ekman-Larsson. They are guys that are not afraid to get up in your grill, and also they're very, very good offensively. But in terms of defensively, I think the Florida Panthers do probably have the edge over an Edmonton Edmonton Oilers team that isn't bad defensively when looking at it. 2.26 goals against at 5-on-5, eighth, as well as eighth in expected goals. But during these playoffs, they have been exposed at times in terms of beyond the Bouchard and Ekholm pairing. That pairing is fantastic. That's arguably the best pairing in the entire NHL. But there are some serious question marks, which we're going to get into with our key matchups in terms of Darnell Nurse, Cody Ceci, Brett Kulak, Philip Broberg, Vinny Desharnais. It is not the most impressive group. So I think we can agree Florida definitely has probably a bigger advantage in terms of their defense core than the Oilers have the advantage in terms of the offensive firepower. When looking at goaltending, I think it is closer than people give it credit for. I do think Bobrovsky is the better goaltender, sixth in goals saved above expected, fourth in these playoffs, as well as a very solid regular season save percentage. He hasn't been that good in the playoffs, but he's been serviceable. But when looking at Stuart Skinner, he's been okay. He has not been bad this season. A very, very bad start, but beyond that start, he has been pretty solid. 2 goals saved above expected during the regular season, 2.1 in the playoffs. So he's a positive goaltender in the playoffs in the regular season. The save percentage has not been that impressive, but I think that's been more so on the defense score with a 905 during the regular season. And when looking at Stuart Skinner in the regular season, once Chris Knoblauch got hired, he had a 912 for the next 40 games. So he really found his game towards the end. It has been very bipolar in these playoffs. First couple games in the Kings series, not too good. Then kind of shuts it down towards the end. Has that one, what was it, game 4 to go up 3-1 was fantastic. Vancouver Canucks all over the place in a bad way. That wasn't that good against the Vancouver Canucks. But then in the Dallas Stars from game 3 to 6, and especially in that final game where he stopped 34 of 35 shots, he was fantastic for the Edmonton Oilers. He was very good for the Oilers. So I don't think that there is this massive, massive gap. I would give a slight edge to the Florida Panthers, considering Bobrovsky has been there in the Stanley Cup final. He was fantastic last year, but I don't think that this is the leaps and bounds that people are acting like that. It's prime Vasilevsky versus, I don't even know who to say, like Alexander Georgiev or something like that. Stuart Skinner has proved last series he kind of put some of my doubts to rest in terms of the fact that he can step up in massive games and make the big saves for the Edmonton Oilers. They got to avoid the stinkers because sometimes this guy allows 4+ goals and 3 of them are kind of all on him, but I think it is pretty close. And when looking at the special teams of the two teams, the last aspect of the overall teams that we're going to go over, Florida's a very good team. Florida's a very good team in terms of their special teams. 8th in the regular season in power play, 6th in penalty kill. It should be 6th in power play. Yeah, 6th in playoff power play. And then the penalty kill, very good in the regular season and has really come alive in these playoffs. 88.2%. Very, very good against the New York Rangers, but not quite as good as the Oilers power play, which was 4th in the NHL this year after setting the all-time record last year. And they have been on a tear in terms of these playoffs. 37.3%, first in the entire NHL. Now, when looking at the Edmonton Oilers penalty kill, it's very interesting. 15th in the regular season. It was only, I know that it's 6th versus 15. It was only a 2.9% difference in terms of percentage. But in these playoffs, their penalty kill has really come alive and really been massive. Now, will the Edmonton Oilers be able to slow down the Florida Panthers power play to only convert on 6% of their penalties? I don't really think that's going to be the case. I think there will be some regression, but the fact that I'm seeing this Edmonton Oilers penalty kill step up in a massive way on top of having that legendary all-time power play, I think they do have the advantage in the special teams. And Florida is a team that likes to get physical, so they might be a little bit prone if the whistles do come out to be put in unfortunate situations and go on the penalty kill. Although their penalty kill has been very good, it is a different beast with the Edmonton Oilers. I would slightly give the advantage to the Edmonton Oilers. So in looking at this, thus far, I think the Panthers are the better even strength defense team, have the better goaltending, but I would lean Edmonton in terms of offensive production as well as special teams. So again, very close series. Now we're going to dive into some of the key matchups in this series and what I kind of think will go down, how effective things will be. The first matchup, I'm not the first one to bring this up. This has been talked about to death, but you got McDavid versus Barkov, the most skilled offensive player of all time versus the new best defensive center in the entire NHL, the new Patrice Bergeron. He's basically being hailed as after winning the Selke, probably going to win multiple more Selkes. And yeah, when looking at it, McDavid's been unstoppable in these playoffs, basically his entire goddamn career in the playoffs in regular season. And Barkov has done a very effective job at shutting down opposing superstars. They're not Connor McDavid McDavid, but opposing superstars. When looking at Nikita Kucherov, he had 0 goals in the series in 5 games and only 3 even strength points, all assists. Pasta had 1 power play goal and just 2 even strength assists. Panarin had 2 even strength points total in 6 games. So yeah, he's been fantastic defensively as well as offensively. He's put up like around a point per game, but there's a different beast in the Stanley Cup final for him. And there's no stopping McDavid like he maybe stopped a Kucherov, a Pasternak, a Panarin. There's only slowing down. And will he be able to slow him down? I think that genuinely, if this game goes 6 or 7 games and McDavid only has 9 or 10 points, I think that would be a fantastic job by Alexander Barkov. And if you told me that happened, I'd say there's a 70% chance the Florida Panthers win this series. I know that's crazy to say that if he has 10 points in a 7-game series, that's slowing him down, that's shutting him down. But by Connor McDavid's standards, the past 3 playoff runs that he's been on, yeah, that kind of is. In the numbers, when looking at McDavid and Barkov head-to-head, in 10 games, McDavid has 4 goals and 11 assists, which is honestly pretty solid against Connor McDavid, considering he came onto the scene. He was instantly an amazing player, and most of those games were past the 2020 season. But when looking at it, what's really interesting about that, so 15 points in 10 games head-to-head, but when McDavid played the Florida Panthers with Barkov not in the lineup, McDavid has 4 goals and 4 assists in 3 games. So Barkov can kind of slow down McDavid. I know it's a very small sample size, don't get me wrong, but that's the only sample size that we have between the two. So Barkov obviously is massive to this Florida Panthers team. We know that. But especially in terms of slowing down their top players, it's going to be interesting. Again, they're not going to be playing head-to-head the entire goddamn game, but Alexander Barkov's number 1 assignment in this series above offense is probably slowing down Connor McDavid. I still think Connor McDavid's going to get his own, especially talking about it as before on the power play, but I think Barkov is by far the hardest matchup that Connor McDavid has probably had ever in his entire career in a 7-game series. I would lean McDavid's obviously the better player. I think McDavid is going to eat, but Barkov is going to be very effective. I'd be surprised if McDavid has another series at 2 points per game or above that, but I think 1.5 to 1.75 is probably going to go down. Another massive matchup in this series is the new Oilers' second pair of Darnell Nurse and Brett Kulak versus the Panthers' top 6, because yes, Bouchard and Ekholm, they're going to be relied on to play a shit ton because they are one of the best pairs in the entire NHL, and Florida does have this fantastic top 6, but I'm more interested. I know those guys are going to be able to hold their own both offensively and defensively against Florida's best. What is going to happen with Darnell Nurse and Brett Kulak, considering Darnell Nurse was playing straight up horrendous the first 2.5 series with Cody Ceci. He links up with Brett Kulak. Although they did get outscored when they were together, one of those were the butt goals. They had the butt goal by Darnell Nurse. Remember that? They had a solid 50% expected goals percentage in around 50 minutes together during the Dallas Star Series. I know that's not like that impressive, but compared to Cody Ceci and Nurse, it was like 38%. So that second pair for Edmonton, if Brett Kulak can be that reliable defense partner for Darnell Nurse, I think that is going to be massive for the Edmonton Oilers in this series. They can't get out of position. They're not burners. They cannot mess up. They cannot be pinching up offensively. They just need to sit back, play solid defense. Don't let anything by you. Don't do anything stupid. Don't take any stupid penalties. Right now, Darnell Nurse has 8 penalty minutes. He had 8. Yeah, he's 4 minor penalties in these playoffs. Brett Kulak has 10 total penalty minutes. Just got to play smart, sound hockey. You don't have to light up the scoreboard. I don't need 4 points, 5 points from Darnell Nurse in 6 or 7 games. I just need solid defensive play by that pair, and I like the Edmonton Oilers' chances. The other matchup, we got Barkov versus Draisaitl. That means somebody's got to lock, or Barkov versus McDavid. That means somebody has to lock down Draisaitl, which is just as hard of a task, and that's going to be Sam Bennett. Draisaitl versus Bennett, the 2014 3rd and 4th overall selection. And yeah, if Barkov's going to be occupied with McDavid, then you got another all-time playoff performer, Hart winner, that somebody's going to have to go head-to-head against, and that's going to be Sam Bennett in that second line. I think Bennett is not going to be able to keep up with Leon Draisaitl. I think we can agree with that. He's going to have to get under his skin, get physical with him. Sam Bennett is an absolute pest, so he's going to have to toss around. That line is going to have to be very physical with the Leon Draisaitl. Immediately, as soon as he's on the puck, swarm him. Do not let him get out in transition, and that is going to be a massive matchup in this series. When looking at the X factors, I'm going to give one for each team. For the Edmonton Oilers, I'm going to go with Evander Kane. I know that might be an interesting pick considering he's not the best player, not the best two-way guy. But speaking about what I just did with Leon Draisaitl and Sam Bennett, Evander Kane needs to be an option for Leon Draisaitl in that second round. Evander Kane, in order to win this series, he needs to score at least 3 goals. That's what I'm setting the bar out. Whether that's in 6 or 7 games, he needs to produce. He needs to score some goals. You look at him in that series, that overall playoffs 2 years ago where he had 13 goals in 15 games. Don't need that Evander Kane, but he needs to be an effective option for Draisaitl. If they're going to come crashing down on him in transition on the rush, Evander Kane needs to be an effective second line left winger for the Edmonton Oilers. They cannot be a 4-person forward core like we've kind of seen at times with Draisaitl, Hyman, McDavid. I know that first line is going to be able to cook for a decent amount. I need that second line, considering Florida's second line is so good. I need Evander Kane to show up and be the Robin to Draisaitl's Batman on that second line. When looking at the Florida Panthers X Factor, Anton Lundell, baby. He maybe doesn't have the most impressive regular seasons the past 2 years after having like 40 points in 66 games, but he's been fantastic for them in the playoffs. 3 goals, 9 assists in 17 games, rocking a 63.2% goals percentage at 5-on-5 in these playoffs, as well as 54.5% expected goals. He's been massive. He's been one of the best third-line centers, arguably the best third-line center in these entire playoffs. And you look at his line of Tarasenko and Luostarinen and what it's looking like right now, they have the possibility to absolutely feast on this Edmonton Oilers bottom 6. When looking at this Edmonton Oilers bottom 6, not that impressive. I do like Adam Henrique, but yeah, be skating with Connor Brown and Matthias Janmark, and that fourth line is what it is. That third line for the Florida Panthers is going to be massive. Anton Lundell obviously drives that first line, or that third line as the center. Anton Lundell, again, if I need 3 goals from Kane in the series, I need at least 4 points in this series from Anton Lundell, whether it goes 6 or 7. I need him to show up in a big way with that depth scoring, while the top 6 they're going to score, don't get me wrong, but they're going to be very occupied in terms of battling with McDavid and Draisaitl. So that's what I'm looking for. I'm looking for Anton Lundell to really show up. Now, one thing I want to talk about before I really get into my prediction is this narrative around the Oilers, the physicality. I've seen this a couple times, that the Panthers are going to be able to toss them around in terms of physicality. I don't know where that narrative is really coming from. The Edmonton Oilers are not the 2021 Edmonton Oilers anymore. McDavid and Draisaitl aren't like goddamn Mitch Marner, as well as the fact that the guys that they've picked up in recent years, like Zach Hyman, Kane, and Matthias Ekholm, are very physical, playoff build kind of guys. So I don't really get where that's coming from. That's one thing that I've seen a lot in the comments. You could say Florida is a more physical team, but to say that they're going to toss around the Edmonton Oilers, I don't really understand where that comes from. But without further ado, my prediction, what I think is going to happen. My brain is telling me Panthers in 7, but my heart, my gut is telling me Oilers in 7. I'm going to go with the Oilers in 7. I'm going with the Oilers in 7. Again, I think that the Panthers are not going to be able to contain McDavid and Draisaitl. I think they are going to feast at the end of the day. Panthers might get mad, might take some dumb penalties, and as a result, the Edmonton Oilers power play. The Panthers have been the most penalized team in this year's playoffs, so I think Edmonton is going to find a way. As long as Stuart Skinner doesn't have at least 2 stinkers of games, I think Edmonton's going to be close in every single game. I think 1 or 2 games, they're just going to explode in terms of 5-on-5 in offensive production. They're going to get 5-6 goals. I'm going with Edmonton. Yes, Edmonton is not as deep as the Florida Panthers, but I think their top of the lineup players will show up in a big way. Although they don't have Stanley Cup final experience, I made a post on it. The playoff games total are about the same between the two teams. Edmonton was in the Western Conference Finals 2 years ago. So I'm going with the Edmonton Oilers. It feels almost destined that McDavid is going to win the Stanley Cup and the drought. Again, these two teams are razor close. I don't think Florida's going to win in 5 games. I do agree Florida maybe is the better overall constructed team, but I'm going with Edmonton. I am going with Edmonton. I think they're being underrated in terms of the fact we said all the same things that people were saying about Florida being the far deeper, more physical team. You said that about Dallas. It didn't go their way. And even in that last game, yes, Dallas outplayed them, but they were facing elimination they were facing elimination, so they were going all balls to the wall. I think that the Edmonton Oilers are a very good team. And again, they've been the best team in the entire NHL since Chris Knobloch has been hired. Going with the Edmonton Oilers. Let me know in the comments, what do you think? I think that it's probably going to go horrible for me now. The Florida Panthers are going to win in 5 games. But yeah, let me know in the comments, who do you think is going to win the Stanley Cup and why? And I'll be seeing you in the next one.